Kynog. I'm Paul Haversrud. Thanks for listening.
This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
Here's to the bold. The Professional Women's Hockey League is back. Lace up, strap in, and tune in to Hockey Saturdays on CBC, where you can catch the best women's hockey players competing head-to-head with everything they've got. The puck drops Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern on CBC, CBC Gem, and cbcsports.ca. Don't miss it.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere.
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at minus 24 with an extreme cold warning in downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon, I'm Matt Humphrey. Winnipeg police are looking for a third suspect in the murder of a soccer player this past July. 22-year-old Mohammed Yusuf Abdullahi was shot to death just before midnight in the parking lot of the soccer complex on Waverley Street. The Canada-Africa Cup of Nations tournament had just wrapped up. Constable Danny McKinnon says 26-year-old Ibrahim Bangura was arrested for first-degree murder last month. And last week, 27-year-old Norbert Kapala was also charged with first-degree murder. She says police are now searching for a third suspect, 22-year-old Trezor Horenbeer.
These people were all likely known to each other, at least acquaintances. There was some type of conflict that occurred, possibly related to drugs, gang activity, some type of criminal objective that was occurring between them.
McKinnon says Horenbeer may be in the Ottawa area now. You can see a photo on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel could have an effect on more than 500 jobs in Selkirk. Gurdeau Steel Mill manufactures most of the steel in Manitoba, worth $200 million a year. Mayor Larry Johansson says most of that steel heads to the United States.
I feel it's a bit of a wake-up call that it's not business as usual. Even if these tariffs come off, within a year or maybe within a few months, fingers crossed, we still have to look at doing business differently.
Johansson says it's time to find ways to open up trade with other countries and provinces. Meanwhile, an industry leader says Canada and U.S. manufacturing are so intertwined, it's going to be difficult to cut the U.S. off entirely. Terry Shaw is the Prairie's vice president of the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. He says raw materials and finished products have been flowing back and forth across the border for decades. And the 25% tariff on Canadian goods will also hurt U.S. businesses. Shaw says looking for other markets is good, but the U.S. is an important trading partner.
We're never going to get out of that. They're too big and they're too close, and we are too intertwined. Now, exploring alternative markets, looking at expanding some of our trading relationships and some of our trading pathways, our supply chain pathways, always a good idea.
Shaw says even though retaliatory tariffs will also have an impact, Canada has no choice but to impose them. The Canadian premiers are converging on Washington, D.C. for a joint lobbying effort against the Trump administration's latest threats, and Ontario's Doug Ford got the ball rolling this morning with an appearance before the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Let's stop wasting time and energy fighting each other, threatening tariffs that will only hurt workers, hurt businesses, and cost more for families, hurting hard-working people just looking to get ahead in life. Instead, let's focus on restoring the pride of Made in the USA and Made in Canada.
The White House says the tariffs will start on March 12th, and ahead of that, the Prime Minister is coordinating with world leaders. Justin Trudeau is at a global AI summit in Paris and had an opportunity today to deliver a message directly to the Trump administration. Olivia Stefanovic explains.
As usual, these summits are a great opportunity to speak with a range of leaders.
Moments after the Prime Minister made those comments to reporters in Paris, a senior federal government official says Justin Trudeau got in a word with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance.
We will stand up for Canadian workers. We will stand up for Canadian industries.
The official says Trudeau mentioned the impact steel tariffs will have in Ohio, Vance's home state, among Canada's largest markets, and one of the states where U.S. President Donald Trump wants to revive steelmaking. Trudeau did not announce retaliatory measures today, but he warned Trump's 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports will drive up costs for Americans. Trudeau says Canada will work with the Trump administration over the coming weeks to highlight the consequences the tariffs could have on both sides of the border. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Paris.
And the Public Health Agency of Canada says influenza cases are on a sharp rise. Positive tests for the virus are up 17% from the previous week. In the United States, cases are peaking for a second time this season. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says doctors' office visits driven by flu-like symptoms are way up, hitting a higher level than any flu season in 15 years. The CDC estimates at least 24 million illnesses and 13,000 deaths. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. For news anytime, again, you can head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or you can use the CBC News app. Taking a look at that chilly forecast, the extreme cold warnings remain in place. In Winnipeg, mainly sunny with wind and a high of -20 today. We are expecting wind chill to -40 overnight tonight. Brandon, a high of -20 and mainly sunny. Dauphin, a mix of sun and cloud, a high of -19. Flin Flon, a chance of light snow, a high of -19. Thompson, a high of -21. You're listening to CBC.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, and everywhere on the CBC Manitoba YouTube page. I'm Corey Funk. Good to be with you. Coming up this hour on the show, with Canadians booing the American national anthem at sporting events recently, it sparked a larger debate around anthems. Should they be the center of political tensions? We're going to open up the listener line to talk more about that coming up after 12:30. But at 12:15 today, response times are longer and more ambulances are sitting idle as the paramedic shortage continues to impact rural Manitoba. We're going to get the details, more new details on the impact. But first, more details on a recent homicide in our community. On July 13th of 2024, police responded to a call at the soccer complex on Waverly Street here in Winnipeg. 22-year-old Mohammed Yusuf Abdullahi of Winnipeg was fatally shot after a game in a tournament called the African Cup of Nations. Police have arrested 2 suspects, but are now calling on the public to help find a third suspect. 22-year-old Trezor Horember, warrant for the first-degree murder has been issued for his arrest. Constable Danny McKinnon, Public Information Officer, is with the Winnipeg Police Service.
It's prudent to say that Abdullahi was a player in this tournament. In fact, he had just finished his game. Although he was originating from Ethiopia, he was playing for Team Eritrea, and he had just finished the game and come into the parking lot area when this fatal shooting took place. So homicide investigators from the Winnipeg Police Service have continued to work on the investigation, worked with the community members, his family, as well as the organizers of the event, Tremendous impact obviously felt on the community, not only with the players and the spectators, but really the entire community with such a tragic event in a public place at a recreational event. So the homicide unit was able to eventually identify 3 suspects in this shooting. And on January 20th of this year, 2025, 26-year-old Ibrahim Bangura was arrested for first-degree murder in Winnipeg here. And on February 5th, 2025, a second a second suspect, 27-year-old Norbert Kapala, was arrested already in the Thunder Bay Correctional Facility on another matter, also charged with first-degree murder. However, a third suspect remains outstanding. They have now identified this individual as 22-year-old Trezor Horembear, and he is wanted on a Canada-wide warrant for first-degree murder as well. Now, he's described up here. You can have a look at his photograph. Approximately 5'8", quite slim, 120 pounds. He's considered armed and dangerous, so police ask to not approach him. If you know of his whereabouts, please call 911. Now, he's believed to be potentially in the Ontario area. And all means of trying to find him at this stage are now at the point where police are asking for public assistance. It should be noted that Horembear has another warrant, and that is issued by the OPP, and it's related to firearms offenses in the Hawkesbury area, and Hawkesbury is just a small town east of Ottawa. That's for any other folks that are potentially from Ontario, or if you know people in Ontario, or for law enforcement in Ontario who our agency is obviously working closely knit with. If you see this individual, if you have any information about his whereabouts, do not approach. You can do the following. You can call 911, whatever city you're in. You can call the Winnipeg Police Service, our homicide unit, at 204-986-6508. Or you can do the anonymous route and provide a tip through Crime Stoppers at 204-786-TIPS or online at winnipegcrimestoppers.org. There is a financial award potentially for viable tips, anywhere up to $2,000 for something this serious as a homicide. Any tip will be considered and followed up on. So very important that you understand this is an option if you don't want to talk directly to law enforcement. So I should just say that this has been a very lengthy and fulsome investigation. As I mentioned earlier, the community within the African Cup of Nations soccer tournament, the organizers, they were very supportive to the community, to the players, but also worked very diligently with the Winnipeg Police Service immediately upon this shooting, as well as continuing to offer support and cooperation. Investigators indeed investigated over 100 individuals. They do believe that the suspects in this matter, 2 of whom have been arrested, and Horembear standing out right now, took methods to conceal themselves and that they were likely in the crowd of the soccer game, covering their faces and potentially trying to evade police, obviously.
Constable Danny McKinnon, Public Information Officer with the Winnipeg Police Service. Police are asking for public assistance in gathering information about the whereabouts of 22-year-old Trezor Horembear. He is considered armed and dangerous. And for more information about this story and how to get in contact with police, if you have a tip, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba or winnipeg.ca/police.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you when it happens
and how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
12:13 right now. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1. And still to come, response times are longer and more ambulances are sitting idle as the paramedic shortage continues to impact rural Manitoba. We're going to get the details on that and what some new numbers show about the impact of that shortage coming up shortly here. But first, let's take a quick look at your current conditions across the province. Right now in Brandon, there at the airport, it is mainly sunny. You're sitting at minus 24. Churchill's our cold spot right now with some ice crystals, minus 29. So as you can imagine, very, very cold. Well, pretty much right across the province. And that means that Morden is our hotspot right now. It's minus 18. So very, very cold conditions, frostbite in minutes. Dauphin at the airport, some haze right now. You're sitting at minus 21. Flin Flon at the airport, mainly sunny, minus 24 for you right now. The Pas at the airport, some haze for you, minus 24. Thompson at the airport, partly cloudy. Victoria Beach, you're minus 25 right now. Sagaming and Riding Mountain, you're minus 23. And Winnipeg at the Forks, minus 22. Well, here's a number for you. 30,000 hours a month. That's how long, on average, rural ambulances were out of service in 2024. That's because there weren't enough paramedics to operate them. The Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals estimates over 200 of the roughly 800 paramedics in the paramedic shared health positions are vacant. The MAHCP filed a Freedom of Information request to obtain data about the impacts of the paramedic shortage, and its president, Jason Linklater, joins us now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me today.
So I want to break down the response times a little bit here. So response times are longer in Prairie Mountain, about 12% longer, and in Northern Health, they're 39% longer. So why are they up in those areas in particular?
So it still all boils down to staffing numbers. The maximum response times at the 90th percentile have reached over 50 minutes in Western Manitoba and Interlake, and they should be under 30 minutes. And the northern and southern zones aren't hitting their wait time targets either. They both have hit highs of around 37 minutes and 35 minutes in the south. And as you mentioned, 30,000 hours per month sitting idle. And that correlates to the number of positions that are sitting vacant in Manitoba right now, which is around 200 positions.
And that high response time, is that just because paramedics have to travel further to get places?
Further distances because there aren't enough ambulances to cover those areas. So when you have fewer paramedics, you'll have an ambulance covering a larger area.
And what impact does the shortage have on paramedics who are working?
Well, it's significant on the people doing the work. We have high levels of burnout because of that. They work 4 on, 4 off. They're also on call during their 4 on period. So a lot of times paramedics end up working 4 days straight. There is a lot of disappointment related to the situation remaining the same over the past year and a half under the NDP government. I did think it was interesting to read in the paper today that Minister Asaguera points out that under the PCs, paramedics weren't paid appropriately, and that hasn't changed under this government either. So while there may have been a historical reason that our rural paramedics are in this position. Nothing's changed. It remains the same. There's been a net gain of 14 paramedics rurally, and that's something that is relatively insignificant given the number of vacancies we have in the province right now.
Yeah, I see. Budget 2024, the goal was 90 new paramedics. The province's data says that it's a net gain of 14 paramedics between April 1st and December 31st, 2024. We've also reached out to Minister Asseguara's office for comment and have yet to receive a response. But besides, obviously, like you mentioned, pay, what are the things standing in the way of filling those 200 positions right now?
Well, I think by far the number one thing, and the thing that we can see historically, was rural paramedics were contractless for 5 years, for over 5 years actually. And we saw an exodus out of rural paramedicine into City of Winnipeg and to different careers altogether. If there's not an employment contract in place, people aren't staying in the positions they're in, never mind being able to recruit. Unfortunately, there was only a contract in place for paramedics for 8 months, and they have remained under the NDP government without a contract for the last 10 months. And so we're starting to see a repeat of the exact same situation again.
Also, while this is all happening, call volumes are up on average 64% across the 4 rural health regions since 2018. The region with the highest is actually Northern Health. It's actually up 85%. So I'm wondering, even if Shared Health manages to fill all those, 200 positions or so, at the same time, there is this increased demand. Is that these 800 total positions, is that even enough to keep up with the demand for service?
Well, we know that to get things to where they need to be in terms of having a stable emergency response system in Manitoba, they would need to put through 100 paramedics per year for 5 years, and that would stabilize the movement of paramedics through the system due to retirement and other reasons. So we're so way far off of where things need to be. And to be in this position a year and a half later is probably the most disappointing part. I think the thing that spurned us to get these numbers was we were hearing a lot of good news announcements come out of government related to all the good things that were happening. And that is just simply not the experience of people who are working on the front line. The experience on the front line is that for the majority of the professions in allied health, paramedics being one of them, we aren't seeing change. And we want them to make a significant change towards staffing throughout every single profession in Manitoba.
You said there's been 10 months without a contract. What's the chances there might be some sort of job action, and how are negotiations going right now?
So we do have a strike mandate. And I want to reinforce that is the last place anybody wants to see this go is a strike position. But if government is not going to keep good on their promises, and if we don't start to see change, that is something that is likely happening in the near future. We just aren't seeing movement at the bargaining table that needs to be there.
We'll leave it there. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Jason Linklater is president of the Manitoba Association of Healthcare Professionals. As I mentioned earlier, CBC has reached out to Health Minister Uzoma Asseguara for comment, but has yet to receive a response.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
A modestly priced hair salon offered a real dumb coupon.
Not $50 off, $50 on.
The city of Vienna posted negative online comments over spectacular photography. And a discount airline embraced their cheap aesthetic.
We call that flying smart class.
Advertising to Haters on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen.
12:23 right now here on Radio Noon. And the recent trend of booing the American national anthem at sporting events is getting some pushback. In Quebec City, organizers of an international Pee Wee hockey tournament urged fans not to boo their American neighbors. They noted that many of the people in the stands would be family members of the American players visiting Canada. And all of this got CBC's Blair Sanderson wondering about the appropriateness of booing another country's anthem. And he hit the streets to find out if people are cheering or jeering the trend.
Hello. How's it going? Very well. How are you? Pretty good.
Is it okay to boo the American national anthem at sporting events?
I think it should be encouraged. Absolutely. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I would boo the American national anthem at a sports game.
How would it sound? What is your boo like?
Boo, you know? Yeah.
Boo! You got to put it out there some way or somehow to let them know what is really going on here. Things have to change.
People need an outlet, and if that's one way to strike back against the United States, do your little part to make you feel better, then yeah, by all means, power to you.
I personally wouldn't, but I can't really fault others for doing it necessarily. I feel like it's bad karma if you do it almost, so if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all, so I feel like booing the national anthem of the U.S. is a little rude.
At this point, I'm not too worried about whether the Americans like it or not. They're talking about imposing economic warfare on us.
Seems like a pretty kind of minimal little move to make to regain a little bit of power.
And it also just helps to serve as a lightning rod to unify people.
Well, I really applaud the spirit of it, although I think that it is lowering our people to a level that we shouldn't be at. That is no way to treat another nation, even though in our hearts we believe that they're wrong. The thing is still to show respect to another nation's anthem.
Booing is a shame. I would rather they said, Canada, Canada.
I think we should boo only during when the puck drops. I think our frustration should be with the government and not with their people.
That was a comment that was made by the Manitoba Premier, Wab Kinew, as well.
Don't boo the opposing team's national anthem, okay? Boo the opposing team when they touch the puck. That is the Canadian way.
I agree with that. I agree with his statement.
Yeah, I mean, they are certainly, I think en masse, a fairly patriotic bunch. So, but you know what? If they're upset, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that puts a little bit of pressure back on the president, and hopefully he hears that.
I don't know if he really knows what he's doing, but it's not a game. This is something that is very serious in life towards everybody, towards every nation, towards the world.
If Trump were walking by right now, would you boo him?
I ain't gonna say nothing. I'd like to do a lot of things, but anyway, he deserves a few boos for what he's doing. So,
thank you very much. I cheer for you.
Yeah, that's right, and I cheer for the Canadians.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time.
You too. No problem. Have a great day.
So, would you boo the red, white, and blue or not? That's the question today in our call-in conversation after 12:30. We'd love to hear your perspective. Maybe you were at a recent Jets game where it happened. Were you booing? Were you not? Tell us why. Write this number down and call us after 12:30 when we open up the lines. 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. Well, next here on the show, we got time for a bit of music. So for his sophomore album, Boy Golden went to a cabin in the woods with nothing but a microphone and a cassette recorder. And the result is something more self-reflective than his first record, Church of Better Days. From his latest release for Eden, here's Winnipeg's own Boy Golden with Burn, here on CBC Radio 1.
I'm packing on my bags, I'm telling all my friends, we're moving on to a better place, somewhere we've never been. In my dreams it's a big old bus, and it's all packed up with guitars and such. We all got enough to roll one up. When we get on stage, we burn the place down. Place down. by my side, my best friend playing slide. We hit the last number right, got up in the morning for a red-eye flight. No time to waste, no time, no chase, no. When we get on stage, we burn the place down. Burn the place down. We burn the place down. We burn the place down. We burn the place down.
From Winnipeg, that's Boy Golden with Burn. Time now for your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at minus 22 with an extreme cold warning in downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. 3 people are charged with first-degree murder in connection to the shooting death of a soccer player last summer. 2 are in custody, and police are asking for your help finding the third. On July 13th, 22-year-old Mohammed Yusuf Abdullahi was in the parking lot after the Canada African Cup of Nations when he was shot and killed. Constable Danny McKinnon says last month, police in Winnipeg arrested 26-year-old Ibrahim Bangura. On February 5th, 27-year-old Norbert Kapala was arrested at the Thunder Bay Correctional Center. Now, police say they believe the third suspect, 22-year-old Trezor Horenbear, is in Ontario.
They do believe that the suspects in this matter, 2 of whom have been arrested and Horenbear standing out right now, took methods to conceal themselves and that they were likely in the crowd of the soccer game, covering their faces and potentially trying to evade police.
Anyone with information about Horenbear is asked to contact police, and you can see his photo at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Canadian leaders are working to head off 25% U.S. steel and aluminum tariffs. The White House says those will come into effect on March 12th. Here in Manitoba, the mayor of Selkirk says those tariffs would be devastating. Mayor Larry Johansson says steel is a major employer in his city, and every day semi-trailers loaded with steel from the Gurdo plant heads to the United States. He says the plant recently retooled to make its products green.
It's environmentally friendly. It's made from recycled steel, so it's very, very important that it's not disrupted. We've got well over 500 employees that work in the steel industry in Selkirk.
Johansson says under the previous Trump administration in 2018, tariffs were put on steel for about a year. He says at that time the plant didn't have to lay anyone off, but Johansson isn't sure if it can weather these new tariffs. And finally, Uber and Lyft are about to get some competition here in Canada. An Estonian company has launched a ride-sharing service called Hop. It's now available in the Toronto area with plans to expand to other regions across the country in the coming months. Hop joins Uber, which arrived in Canada 13 years ago, and Lyft, which debuted in 2017. And that is your CBC News from Winnipeg. Debuted, Corey?
Debuted. I was going to say debuted because that's what we're talking about is booing. Whether you should do it during a national anthem.
I heard that.
I won't ask your opinion, but...
it's not for me to have one.
Well, thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
That is Matt Humphrey at the CBC News Desk. Welcome back to Radio Noon here on CBC Radio 1. And indeed, the phone lines are now open. If you want to share your input, maybe you were at a Jets game recently and you heard some booing during the American National Anthem. Maybe you chose not to boo. Maybe you did. What do you think about that? Give us a call, 204-780-0893, 204-780-0893. And do you think Anthem should be the place where we express our political opinions? We're going to have a conversation about that coming up right away. But first, I'm sure lots of people have many opinions about the weather right now, and I'm happy to say that I don't like it. at all. I'm okay with saying that opinion. Riley, what's going on? This is Riley Lechuk, our CBC weather specialist. Yeah.
If you're not a fan of this weather, I don't have good news for you.
Oh, darn.
It's sunny, though.
Oh, that's true.
Hey, it's bright. It's sunny. It's not a lot of wind out there. It's a bit of a breeze out there, but it's not terrible. Right? Minus 23 in Winnipeg right now. Brandon's minus 24, minus 20s in Brandon and Portage. Thompson at minus 25. Yes, that extreme cold warning still in place for much of southern and central Manitoba, the Parkland region, Westman, into the Interlake, and into northwestern Ontario. We're looking at another night. We're expecting wind chill values in particular to dip into that minus 40 range. Temperatures themselves close to or below minus 30. Clear skies, high pressure, really keeping us, for the most part, clear. I mean, there is a little bit of cloud out there, so do expect a few clouds for the afternoon. But other than that, we are looking at mostly sunny skies really throughout the day. Today across Manitoba, into tomorrow across Manitoba. We start to build a little bit of cloud in as we get into Thursday, maybe a little bit of instability later Thursday, but for the most part, we're keeping the sunshine around for the next several days here. Looking at a high of minus 20 in Winnipeg this afternoon. Brandon looking at minus 21, close to really minus 20 right across southern Manitoba, close to minus 22, minus 23 through parts of the north. Again, a mix of sun and clouds across the province today. Minus 20 tomorrow in Winnipeg, minus 19s for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and a high of minus 20 on Sunday. And lows, low minus 20s into the minus 30s, really until the weekend at least.
Boo.
I'm sorry. I am sorry.
That's okay. Thanks for coming on. I'm not booing you. I'm really happy you came and told us.
You know
all
what?
about it.
This will lead to probably an extended river trail season.
That's true. And when it's minus 10, which is still legitimately cold, everyone's going to be out in shorts. Because in comparison, it's going to feel good.
Yes.
Thank you very much,
You're
Riley.
welcome.
That is our CBC weather specialist, Riley Lechuk. Well, it is time now for our call-in conversation. And if you've been watching the news, tensions are running high right now between Canada and the U.S. And that tension has been spilling over into sporting events. And with Canadian fans booing the American national anthem, that was an Ottawa Sens game, by the way. It's been the case here in Winnipeg, too, at a Jets game, too, booing American teams. So it's right across the country. So we want to hear, how do you feel about booing the anthem at sporting events? Do you see it as a sign of patriotism or disrespect? And if you've been calling, because I saw our phone lines blowing up and you didn't get picked up, that's because our phone lines are blowing up and Sierra is working her hardest to get people online. Here's the number again, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. And before we get to your calls, here's actually an interesting bit of history. Anthems have been a political hot potato over the decades. In the 60s, both O Canada and the Star-Spangled Banner were played ahead of NHL games, but in 1969, in protest to the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War, the NHL actually only allowed O Canada at Maple Leafs and Canadiens home games. So actually, here's a clip from the start of a Leafs-Bruins matchup from Maple Leaf Garden in 1970.
Welcome to Hockey Night in Canada. From Maple Leaf Garden, the Boston Bruins versus the Toronto Maple Leafs.
So that was the only anthem that was played back in 1970, but no booing, at least during that time. So how do you feel about booing at sports events? 204-780-0893. Joining us now, we also have Trevor Harrison, who's a retired professor of sociology at the University of Lethbridge. Hello there, Trevor.
Good morning.
So I got to get your thoughts. So what's your reaction to booing at games in recent weeks as a form of protest during anthems?
Well, I think it's totally understandable. I think there has been a rise in, patriotism in Canada. Donald Trump and the tariffs and everything else has, reawakened Canadians. We tend to be fairly passive about a lot of these things. But I do think there is kind of a growth of that, excuse me, across Canada. And it's manifesting itself in these kind of, the booing and whatnot at these games. not a surprising thing. As you point out, we've seen a history of this before. And, it's hard to separate patriotism from sports because sports has become part of our kind of national identity. And again, it's not just in Canada. Obviously, the United States treats sporting events as part of their national identity. We see it at soccer games around the world as well, where patriotism runs rampant. Sometimes riots. Fortunately, we haven't had many of those here, and hopefully we don't. But I think it's very difficult to separate these things out, and especially during hard times of really heightened political tension between countries.
So we have Gina on the line. Hello there.
Hello.
Hi. So actually, I understand you're a dual citizen. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
I think it's disrespectful to boo someone's national anthem just because we're upset with one person. I don't think that we should boo their national anthem, and we're better than that, I think.
What do you feel when you hear the booing as a Canadian, but also an American?
It makes me sad. I do agree with booing when the puck is dropped or some other method, but a national anthem, every country it's sacred to them, and I think we could show our feelings a different way.
So you do boo when the puck drops, yourself at least.
Well, I've never gone to a game actually, but I would then, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Gina, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
I'm going to just go actually right to the next person as well here. We have Brenda on the line. Hi there, Brenda.
Hi there.
What are your thoughts on booing at anthems?
I'd say yes, go for it.
And why is that?
And I would. The American president and the American people elected him. He and they are being disrespectful of us. And Canadians are too polite. And it's time we stood up and said, no, we're not going to take this. And booing at a game, if I was at a game, I don't go to many, but yes, would I do it?
Well, thanks for your thoughts there, Brenda. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
I do want to go back to you here, Trevor. So you're hearing two kind of different sides of it already here. But it even kind of has me thinking, in terms of the purpose of anthems themselves, why do we even, have them in the first place, if not to make some sort of deep political statement in some ways, right?
Yeah, this goes back a long ways, with the, kind of the formation of the modern state. The state was looking for all kinds of symbols of unifying people, and almost immediately sports became part of it. We can think back, for example, the 36 Olympics, when Adolf Hitler was very much using the Olympics as kind of, for a political purpose. I think part of the thing around the booing and the anthem, and the two callers, you're right, it's interesting. They both had very different views on this. There's very few direct ways in which Canadians can express their anger at what's going on than through this. They don't have a pipeline to Donald Trump. And the fact is, probably a lot of Americans actually are kind of indifferent to what's going on. It hasn't hit their pocketbook. And so many Americans are just not paying attention to what is being done by their own government. And so you can understand a lot of Canadians saying, well, I'm trying to get across to you that you have hurt a deep-seated, long relationship here. And the only way we can do that is by telling you we don't like this. We have to still live together in some ways. A lot of these hockey players, there's American on Canadian teams, a lot of Canadians on American teams. So after the Four Nations Cup this week, they're going to have to go back to playing on the same team. But I expect during the Four Nations Cup, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when Canada is playing in the United States, because tensions are high and a lot of Canadians are saying, I don't know how to get it across to you that your government has done something wrong here.
Keep those calls coming. Tell us what you think. Is booing during an anthem okay? Not okay? 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. We've got Brenda on the line. Hi, Brenda.
Hello.
Hey, what are your thoughts?
My first thought is if I was at a hockey game, I probably would boo, because that's one way that we can express our solidarity, and heaven knows we need to, and to let Americans know how we feel. And I think that it's important that they get that message. But on the other hand, I think it's important that we, and I disagree with your expert here in some respects, is that there are lots of Americans that oppose Donald Trump. Half of the country did not vote for him. Half of the country is watching a rolling coup, and they need our support, and they are our friends. They are our allies, and we need to remember that too. So where we can extend our hand and help them and support them in their fight, I think that that's important. So I would just encourage people to, express your feelings, but don't forget that there are every other American you see is probably on our side. And Donald Trump got booed at the Super Bowl on the weekend, so they're letting him know how they feel too.
Brenda, thanks for your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Okay, have a good day.
Trevor, I imagine you might want to respond a little bit as well. What are your thoughts?
I think Brenda's absolutely right. I mean, we know just from the election results, it was kind of a 50-50 split, and I'm sure there's a lot of Americans who right now are looking askance at what's going on, saying, what's happening here. The point is that it's I think a lot of Canadians are saying, we don't want your silent support. We want you actually to make it known that you disagree with this. And so the only way, again, that we can get your attention to do that is booing. And then we hope you'll pick up the ball, to use a sports metaphor, and run with it and, try to reverse what's happening.
We got a call from Shane, who just left a message with our director, and so he said, would not boo at the games, but would conduct audiences to sing "O Canada" at the top of their lungs, to kind of revert that energy into more of like Canadian patriotism. Ian, what's interesting is that maybe we kind of take it for granted in North America. So both anthems are mandatory at NHL games, but I actually understand it's actually a very different story in Europe. They're actually reserved only for major international competitions, or when major news breaks out. So this gives it more weight and more meaning. Have we diluted, the meaning of the anthem altogether?
Yeah, it's, right now it's running really high because of the particular context, but I think it's almost pro forma, the singing of the anthems for a lot of people. It's kind of like, okay, we've sung the anthems, drop the puck. And but right now the anthems have become, and it's tied up in our sense of patriotism, our identity. And again, it's totally understandable at this point.
I also realized I called you Ian. Your name is in fact Trevor. Lots of names to balance here on the show.
It's okay. I've been called worse.
Okay, that's good. So what about shifting to something like how the Olympics handles it and play the winner's anthem after the win only, so you're almost kind of like working for your win? What do you think about that as a possibility?
Well, it's interesting. It would be, again, it would give you, I guess, an incentive to go for it. In the case of the Olympics, one of the things to keep in mind here is one of the ideas around the modern Olympics was the hope that you'd get rid of nations, and that it would be the competition among people who are just the best athletes in the world. So it was kind of meant to de-escalate conflict between nations, but very quickly that fell apart. Almost immediately, every nation said, hey, this is a way for us literally to fly the flag and build up a sense of national community. And given that, and the way pro sports has progressed from there, I don't see we're going to go back from this kind of rivalry where the nation is really at stake here. We saw it during the 1972 Cup against the Canada versus the Soviet Union. If there was ever a nationalist appeal going on there, this was war translated to the ice. And Canadians, again, were incredibly patriotic during that time because it's our game. But not only that, this is a battle of two different systems. So politics inevitably got really tied up in what otherwise was just a sporting event.
Give us a call, 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893. Weigh in. Do you think booing during anthems is good, bad? Something that should be going on right now, particularly in this moment. Give us a call, 204-780-0893. It's interesting you mentioned, this whole idea of trying to transcend this whole kind of national paradigm that sports seems to have found itself in. What do you think about just eliminating anthems altogether? Could that be something that kind of brings the heat down a little bit?
It might be possible to do that. It'd be interesting to see what the fan reaction would be to this, because I think we have all become quite used to the idea that our identities are tied up with this. I don't think it's going to happen soon, partly because there's a lot of owners of teams obviously like this as well, because they're fairly patriotic. And then there is kind of the whole national thing. You see in the United States, for example, can you imagine saying we're not going to have the American anthem being sung anymore? Well, think about what happened when Kaepernick decided to kneel. This is an affront to the national something. There's nothing more American than pro football. And so this was really, so I don't see that we're going to be able to get rid of anthems right away. But it's an interesting idea to think about. Could you start to do that, say, at more amateur levels, and get back to just playing the sport for pure sport's sake and de-escalating some of the obvious conflict between teams?
We've got Cole on the line. Hi there, Cole. Hello. Hi, Cole. You there?
Hello.
Oh, hi, Cole. What are your thoughts about booing during anthems?
I think it's bad form. We shouldn't be booing.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think that is?
Well, it's bad sportsmanship for one thing. And these guys are playing for a cup. There's nothing to boo about.
Thanks for that there,
It's
Cole.
bad form. It's bad sportsmanship.
Thanks for that there, Cole. Appreciate it. I mean, it's also kind of interesting just if you just kind of zoom out at like the macro level. You look down and you see it's actually a bunch of players that are both Canadians and Americans playing. Sure, they have a name like the Winnipeg Jets, but it's actually made up of a bunch of people who probably aren't even from Winnipeg. I don't think there's any Jets that are actually, originally Winnipeggers.
Well, and Swedes and Finns and, on and on, Germans. I mean, there's a lot of different nationalities involved in pro sport now.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting to think, how these teams come in and they might symbolize the country of their owners and maybe their fan base and maybe where they play at least half of their games. But at the same time, it's not quite, it's not necessarily a perfect symbol of a nation in many ways.
Exactly. And it's interesting when we look at the national level, you have teams that are facing off against each other. But think, for example, and you've brought up about, say, the Winnipeg Jets, versus the Edmonton Oilers or something. Well, at a kind of sub-national level, we don't have individual flags, but you can kind of see when at the beginning of singing a national anthem between a game between the Jets and the Oilers, people are already divvying up into their tribes, right? So at a subnational level, we still very much take these sports as saying something about our identity. Our team is going to beat the whatever out of that other team over there because this is important to us, even though our team is made up of Dreisaitl's and McDavid's and, a whole bunch of other team players from different nationalities.
We're getting a bunch more calls here. I want to get them on. Sarah, hello.
Hello.
Hey, what are your thoughts?
Well, definitely Canadians do not speak up enough about a whole lot of things, but this is not the place. You might be disrupting the thoughts and actions and energy of your own players when you do this, not just the other players. We have much better communication systems and knowledge and tech to express ourselves by writing to American politicians or chambers of commerce and taking other actions. If you travel, buy your food at a grocery store and let them know that you're not going to patronize restaurants or large hotels, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing that is more general is that we need to think about our thoughts and actions and stop using the name of the person who wants his name glorified. I have not used his name in the last 7 or 8 years. Refer to him as the current administration, the White House. There's a dozen different monikers you can do and keep his name off the air. I personally call him Donnie. So yeah, let the players play and find another way.
Thanks so much for your thoughts there, Sarah. Really appreciate it. I also want to go to Sandra here. Hi there, Sandra.
Hello.
Hi. What are your thoughts on booing during anthems?
Yeah, I support it, and I agree with a lot of the ideas given previously. And just an extension of that is individual Americans need to understand the impact their country is currently having on other nations. And they need to understand why they're not liked in this world. And further to that, why people, I'm not saying we would do this, but, why people take very aggressive actions against their country. Like they just can't go around.
Well, might have lost you there, Sandra. Thanks for that thought there, Sandra. Really appreciate that. We've also got Ed on the line here. Hi there, Ed.
Hi, how are you?
Good. You have maybe a unique thought. I see.
Yes, I have a thought. If you're playing the anthem for the players, there's Americans on there, there's Canadians on there, and that's our countries. But there's one very large contingent that get bored for playing for those two countries. There's Russians that play. A large percentage, I'm sure a third of the people on the teams are Russians.
Finns
Maybe
and
we
Swedes
should play
too,
that so they have also some respect. The Russian players who are on those teams.
Right. So make the anthem not necessarily about the places, the countries that kind of host the game so much as actually for the players.
That's right, because you see them fidgeting all the time when the anthems are being played. I appreciate the Canadian anthem being played, and I don't know whether they should be booed or not. There has to be some way of showing Donnie the disapproval of his actions. But as I said, there was a movie, it's called Dumb and Dumber. They had 2 people applying for it. Now they have, 37 million people who are auditioning for the roles to play Dumb and Dumber?
No, I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot there, Ed. We got one last call here. I do want to squeeze on the show here. Hello there, Aiden.
Oh, hi.
Hey, what are your thoughts?
I went to the game last week, and me and my friend did boo during the anthem. There were some people in our section that I don't think appreciated it too much, but I just personally, I'm pro demonstration, and it is disrespectful. I believe it's intended to be disrespectful, and I believe the regime in America right now with, threatening other countries' sovereignty, like it goes so far beyond the tariffs for me, personally. You look at his comments on Gaza the last week and everything with ICE. I think booing is the least we ought to be doing. It's a small way that we can demonstrate as Canadians. It's our pastime. It's something we care about. And if you are going to be doing the anthems at those games, I think it's perfectly fitting that we show our disgust.
Eden, thanks for your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Trevor, we have literally a minute till we actually have to be off air, but I'd give you about 20 seconds here to sum up. People, clearly there's lots of thoughts on these anthems. Do anthems still play an important part in our collective culture?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they're a way of, again, focusing and bringing us together as a community. It's interesting, the responses of people here. It's almost kind of 50-50 split. And I'm not surprised at that. Canadians are notoriously polite, perhaps to a fault. and slow to anger. But once Canadians get angry, that's all bets are off. And we saw this during the Second World War. People didn't want to fight the Canadians in the army because they were ferocious fighters. And I think we've kind of seen this has stirred that kind of feeling with Canadians about patriotism, and to some extent, as one caller said, this is also bigger than the tariffs themselves. This seems to be a bridge too far what the Trump administration has done. So,
well, that's a wrap, Trevor Harrison. Thanks so much, retired professor of sociology at the University of Lethbridge. That's a wrap for Radio Noon. I'm Corey Funk. Have a good rest of the week.